Alan, if I may, I just wanted to ask you what you thought of Leontino's project in Brazil and whether it fits in very much with the kind of remedy.
I'm very excited about it. I just met him and heard about his work yesterday. I'm very excited. And there are a great many, most people are good. Most people are doing their best. We always have been. And there are a great many good initiatives. But as we realize at a conference like this, we're all talking about what we need to do. We're not talking about how to do it. Now, initiatives like this are beginning to show how to do it. And all we bring to the table is a framework that helps you decide when the practice is appropriate. The term best management practices is an oxymoron. Complexity leads to the fact that there can never be a best management practice. But what we can do is use a holistic framework to decide socially, environmentally, economically what is appropriate in any particular situation, and thus begin to solve our problems.
Thank you. And Leontino, before I open it up to the floor, could I just ask you, I mean, we're talking about long-term, obviously being the most important thing rather than short-term views. And you said it took about 10 years to get the soil to the right level.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just wondering how realistic that is for most farmers.
So we try it in one way and another, you know? That's why it took 10 years to happen. Now we can do it within 3 years. 2 to 3 years, which is almost a miracle considering how many times the soils took to be degraded. And everything we are doing, they follow the same principle, because when we debate about sustainable agriculture, everybody involved tries to find a response. Getting back until 1865, when Justus von Liebig created the chemical fertilizers. We must get back to 3 billion years ago, you know? So what we have done there is to study how life developed over the earth, starting on the gross rock, by the moss, the fungus. I mean, it happened at ecological succession, through which a live organism evolved along the time in different ecosystems, according to a natural order. If we obey this natural order, no matter what you do, pasture, fruit, grains, cane, whatever, it's going to happen. What we can do is to hear the nature. What we can do is to bring back organic matter to the soil in a way that we have to aim to increase the number of biological connections inside a certain ecosystem. And this will bring stability to the ecosystem, no matter it's water resilience and so on.
Well, that's encouraging. 2 to 3 years is better than 1 billion. Jacob, could I ask you how old you are?
I'm 35 years old.
35. So the average age of a farmer is 55 years old. And so I was wondering, in listening to your talk, I was struck by 2 things. One was the extent to which the average farmer would be receptive to this kind of technology. And the other is it looked pretty expensive, you know, the kind of investment needed. So could you comment on those points?
Yeah, of course. The technology that we use is quite expensive, but that's actually only because it's not widely used. If we could implement that technology in the whole of agriculture, the prices would drop enormously. Our biggest problem in the evolvement of farming is that in the past, and that's a good example, I think one farmer had 100 plants to manage and could do that on a very accurate way, on Mother Nature's way, learning from Mother Nature's, working with that. Now, these days, farmers are producing over 100 million plants for just one farmer. The accuracy dropped enormously not only from plant level to zone level to field level. I think 80% of the farmers are only on farming level doing their management. And we can improve, of course we can improve, but we have to do it without all those peoples. We have to do it with technology. And I think that could solve a big problem. Technology is there to improve. That's the expenses. I showed you I work together with my brother, and I've got one deal with my brother. I never can invest in new technology if the old ones are not paid off.
Right.
And that's actually a good idea. And in my case, it worked very fast because of our surroundings, because of our small fields, because of our not rectangular fields. All this technology pays off very fast. We do a lot overlap. Too much is not good for my wallet and also not good for the environment. And that's the nicest thing. If we do precision farming very accurate, we can not only spare money, but also be better for Mother Nature.
Okay. Well, we don't have very long on this session, unfortunately, so I'm going to open it up to the floor so that you could ask questions. It was very much a feature of previous meetings that you wanted a practical session. So if there are any questions, please do indicate them. There's one over there, right in the corner there. Again, if you could give your name and affiliation, please.
Thank you. I'm Myriam Emery from the French Association Entreprises pour l'Environnement. This is a question to Mr. Savory. Thank you very much for your fascinating speech. I found it really interesting to discover that developing livestock farming could help fighting desertification. Of course, the question is, as was mentioned this morning, that livestock production is also a source of greenhouse gas emissions. On the other hand, of course, fighting against desertification and bringing back biomass and carbon into the soil is also compensating for that. But have you made some calculations to see what the final result is when you balance livestock greenhouse gas emissions and carbon stock in the biomass and the soil? Thank you.
Methane and what cows put off is totally an academic side issue. If you assume for a minute that the grassland soils of the world could absorb no carbon, which is totally untrue, if you assume for a minute that cattle put out 20 times the methane they do, so what? You still have no option. I am deadly serious. There is nothing available to science except livestock to seriously address desertification and climate change. I have been criticized because no scientist sticks his neck out so far and says there's only one option. There must be hundreds of options. No, there are none. We are a tool-using animal, and we have only technology and fire, two tools for 99% of human existence. And then we developed the idea of resting the environment to let nature recover about 10,000 years ago, which gave us our third tool. And you cannot even drink water without using technology. I'd have to go to the nearest river. You cannot plant a tree, a grass, without using technology. We only have three tools, and none of those can solve this biological problem of desertification and climate change.
So are you
deadly
saying,
serious.
So are you saying that the concerns about gases in this particular case are just overdone, or are you saying that it is important, but there's just nothing else we can do?
I'm saying that even if they put out 20 times as much, you have no option. Now, fortunately, when cellulose breaks down, you get methane. So if cows don't do it and insects do it, or biological decay gets it, you're going to get the same amount of methane anyway. And when soils are healthy, like these gentlemen are talking about, the soils break down the methane. We had millions more animals before domestic stock, and we didn't have a problem because we had healthy soils. People have no idea of the animals that were in the grasslands of the world. North America has 10 large mammals now. There used to be 40 more. Much of Europe, much of Africa, most of Australia, all the same thing. Humans wiped them out, and we replaced them with very few animals, and desertification and climate change began then, thousands of years ago.
Thank you. There was a question here.
Yeah, thank you. It's Les Furbank from Leeds in the UK. It's particularly for Jakob. A lot of the precision agriculture technologies, the one gap that's been missing from what I've seen, which is the gap that the other two gentlemen have raised, is the issue of soil quality and soil organic carbon. Are the precision technologies coming to support that in intensive UK arable farms?
So I do believe that's the most important, soil quality. That's also why we invested a lot in soil sensoring technology. My biggest issue is, of course, to measure soil life. And soil life measurement digitally is not really easy to do. But soil life is also consuming oxygen, but also producing CO2. So we're thinking in measuring them to then determine if soil life is improving. And I completely agree that the new way of fertilizing crops would be with manure, with cattle. That's a no-brainer for me. In 10 years, I don't want to use fertilizers anymore, and I'm not saying I'm a biological farmer, but I think it's possible also for a dynamical farmer, like I want to be.
Question over there, yes.
So I'm Hugh Jones, Professor of Translational Genomics. It's really for Jakob, but I'd be interested in the others as well. So I'm sure that farming in the way that Jakob's doing it is part of the solution to many of the problems. But it's the ownership of the data I'm interested in. So there's more value in having everybody sharing this data, but individual farmers, I understand, would prefer to keep some of this themselves. So how do you share your data, if you do, and is there a future in global sharing of these kind of data?
Yes, can this data be used by other people as well?
I do believe that this data has an add-on value for farming. I actually using my own data set for buying knowledge. So I share data with the universities all over the world for finding out the things that I don't know and my grandfather did know. About the question, are farmers willing to share data? I think they're willing to share data if there is a business model behind it. And that's the key thing. If we want to do the digital way, if we want to use big data, everybody has to make money. And to think about models and business models of how this actually gathered data could make an extra income for the farming community, I think in the future it would be a no-brainer. But it's also about legislation. What are we allowed to do? What are we doing to get the highest yield? We have a very strict rule in what we can use in organic manure and stuff like that. But we all know that we want to do it for the highest yield potential, and that's actually the biggest key. But in a word, I'm selling my data for getting knowledge. So in a word, yes, the data collection of the farmer is the new way of making money. My biggest challenge is to my end customer to sell to look what if I could quantify the data for an extra income or for an extra added value, and it's a big thing. And I try. The approach that I'm doing now is that if I could use this data to provide to prove my craftsmanship or to prove my Fingerspitzengefühl, I think that would be the key to make extra money about the data that we're gathering.
More experienced.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other questions, please? At the back there.
Hi, Barry McKeown from Community Public Affairs, and my question is for Mr. Savory. With the use of large amounts of livestock to arrest process of desertification, I'm wondering, first of all, whether you envisage the use of reintroduced wild populations or managed herds. And if it is the latter case, how is that reconciled with the socio-political infrastructure of so many areas that are subject to desertification where most holdings would be small holdings? Thanks.
We cannot do it with wildlife alone. Around where I live half the year in Zimbabwe, we have major national parks, Wankichobi, Zambezi National Park. We're right in the middle. And the worst loss of biodiversity now is occurring in the national parks. National parks in humid environments, protection works. It's the most powerful tool we have to restore biodiversity, as you saw with past civilizations, how everything recovered. National parks idea is a wonderful idea. It's not working well in the seasonal rainfall environments. As I say, if you come to us, the worst loss of biodiversity is now in the national parks. Now, between them, on the property that I showed you here, we're running elephants, giraffe, buffalo, lions, cheetahs, leopards, hyenas, impala, kudu, you name it. We've got all the game there. And the livestock are cattle, sheep, and goats that are run as a management herd, habitat management for the wildlife, etc. Like running a bulldozer that doesn't use diesel. But we can't park this bulldozer. So with the planning process, we know months ahead where they're going to be. And they're always in the right place for the right time, the right reason, and with the right behavior to restore the biodiversity. And that way we're able to do it. I made major blunders during the years of struggle to find something that would work. One of them I mentioned in the TED Talk. I, like all scientists, believed if there's damage, there's too many animals. We scientists easily prove what we believe. I proved we had too many elephants, and we went ahead and shot 40,000 elephants, and it got worse when we tried to bring the number down to what we thought the land could sustain. As I said in the TED Talk, that was the biggest blunder of my life. I'll carry that to my grave. But it did make me determined to find solutions to this problem. And so one of my other blunders was to coin the words game ranching. Together with Sir Frank Fraser-Darling and others, we believed if we could get rid of livestock, we could restore the environment with wildlife. Again, we were wrong. It didn't work.
Well,
We've got the worst deterioration in the
refreshing
parks.
to hear people owning up to their
So lots
their
of mistakes made along the way.
Thank you very much indeed. Please join me in thanking the panel.